During a torrential downpour, a woman, later identified as Emma Parker, confusedly staggers into a store as the butcher receives a delivery. After several attempts to address her, she finally responds and explains that the foul weather has strongly affected her. The butcher says that it will get worse before it gets better, and she purchases groceries. As she leaves the store, she sees a poster that advertises missing teenage girls. Before she can reach her car, she begins bleeding from her mouth and loses consciousness after striking her head against a structure as she falls into a rain-filled ditch, where she drowns. Later, the sheriff tells Frank Parker that his wife, Emma, has died. Consumed by grief, Frank does not show up to identify the body but instead sends his two daughters, Rose and Iris. Dr. Barrow, who delivered Frank's young son, Rory, explains that an autopsy is mandated by the state. During the examination, he finds evidence of Kuru's disease. And, while driving through the storm later, finds a motorist in need of assistance. The film implies that Frank attacks her with a tire iron. Interspersed are scenes from a book the oldest daughter is reading, a journal of the family from pioneer times telling of hunger and hardship in the winter. The men of the party have mostly been lost in the wilderness, and the women may not survive the winter. Rose and Iris debate whether they are prepared to take over their mother's religious duties, but Iris is adamant that they perform this year's ritual. Rory, too, has trouble keeping the family's past. Eventually, Rory wanders into his father's shed and finds a young woman held hostage. Frank angrily demands that Rory leave, then forces his daughters to kill and butcher the captive. They reluctantly obeyed, and the entire family eats her remains after a bit of urging from Frank. Barrow, whose daughter previously went missing, becomes suspicious when he finds a bone fragment in a creek. Though Sheriff Meeks brushes off his concerns, Barrow can convince Deputy Anders to investigate. Anders finds more evidence in the creek, only to be confronted by Iris, on whom he has a crush. Iris leads him to a secluded spot, and Anders confesses his feelings for her. Confused and overwhelmed with guilt, Iris breaks into tears. As Anders comforts her, they begin to have sex, but Frank finds them and kills Anders. Disgusted, he tells Iris to return home. Frank orders the girls to stay in their bedroom, and they form a plan to escape. When Frank prepares dinner, he takes a jar full of powder and adds it to the soup. As the children set the table, Rose notices white powder residue and realizes Frank is planning to poison them with arsenic. She unsuccessfully attempts to alert Iris, then knocks Rory's bowl on the floor to prevent him from eating. Before Frank can react, Barrow, whose research has turned up evidence that the Parkers may have engaged in cannibalism, arrives at the home and confronts Frank, demanding to know what happened to Anders and his daughter, whose hair ornament he sees Iris is wearing. Frank stalls for time as he reaches for his pistol, and Iris jumps in front of Barrow to protect him. Frank accidentally wounds his daughter, and Barrow shoots Frank. Frank survives and knocks out Barrow. Rose and Rory flee the house in a panic, and they take refuge with Marge. Frank breaks into Marge's house and kills her, then convinces Rose and Rory to rejoin him. Back at Frank's house, he again urges his children to eat. When he tells Rose that she looks like her deceased mother, Rose bites into her father's neck, tearing away a chunk of his flesh, while Iris stabs her father through the hand. Together, the girls bite into him, ripping away his flesh and devouring it until their father dies. Rose notices Barrow, barely conscious, has witnessed the whole thing, and she places his daughter's stolen hair ornament on his chest. The next morning, the children leave town, and Rose brings a diary that details their ancestors' memories of cannibalism, implying their tradition will live on.